Mayor Turner, ladies and gentlemen, my name's Ed Dorn, and I have been given the privilege of introducing Brianna, who will introduce our honored guest for today. Brianna asked me to provide some context on this event and to take a couple of minutes, no more than a couple of minutes, to do so. So, Brianna, start the clock. Barbara practiced public service, and when she came to the LBJ School in 1979, she began to teach about public service. She practiced what she believed in, and she taught what she believed in. She believed in the Constitution. She believed in equality of opportunity. And she believed in the nobility of public service. Barbara died in 1996 after teaching at the LBJ School for about 17 years. And later that year, the Fifth U.S. Circuit found that this university's affirmative action program, at least the law school's affirmative action program, was unconstitutional. There were even questions about whether a program that the LBJ School used to recruit African American and Hispanic students would pass muster. So when I became dean in 1997, the LBJ School family was in a bit of a funk, grieving the loss of a beloved professor, of course, but also worried greatly about whether the programs that had led to this university's progress, such as it was in 1997, wondering whether those programs would continue or whether we would slide backwards. Students at the LBJ School and faculty members began to ask a question: what would Barbara do? And they organized this forum to provide an answer. Barbara would continue to fight for what she believed in, fight for what she believed was right, and continue to inspire future generations of students about public service. The students organized the first BJ Forum, and every year we invite a prominent speaker, a prominent leader who exemplifies what Barbara Jordan practiced and professed to speak to us. I'm pleased to present Brianna McBride and want to thank Brianna's mom for being here. And Brianna, who was a leader on the main campus of the university and has quickly established herself as a leader at the LBJ School. And Brianna will introduce our guest today. Thank you. And was I close to 2 minutes? All right.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can y'all hear me well? How are y'all doing this afternoon? Good? All right. Thank you so much for being here today. Good afternoon, and also thank you, Dr. Dorn, for that wonderful introduction. My name is Brianna McBride, and I'm one of the 3 Barbara Jordan National Forum co-chairs this year, and I'm really excited to welcome you all to the LBJ School of Public Affairs. Today I have the honor, thank you. Today, I have the honor of welcoming our Houston Mayor, Sylvester Turner. This is extremely special to me just because I am a native of Houston, Texas. My mother and sister are here, also born and raised in Houston. So just to be able to meet you earlier and discuss, various topics, I think that it really falls dear in my heart. And, I'm excited to be here today to welcome you. Mayor Sylvester Turner is an American attorney, politician, and the 62nd mayor of Houston, Texas. As a member of the Democratic Party, Mayor Turner was a member of the Texas House of Representatives for over 26 years. During that time, he served as a member of the Legislative Budget Board, vice chairman of the House Appropriations Committee, and was chairman of several subcommittees during his time. He also chaired the Texas Legislative Black Caucus and the Greater Houston Area Legislative Delegation. As mayor of the 4th largest and the most diverse city in the United States, Sylvester Turner has addressed significant challenges of the city during his tenure as mayor. These include budget deficits, natural disaster relief, voting rights access, and the current response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Mayor Turner has passed 5 balanced budgets, as we know as LBJ students, is very hard to do, and has also oversaw Hurricane Harvey relief and launched Houston's first climate action plan in hopes of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and currently serves as the chair of Climate Mayors and is the president of the African American Mayors Association. One of his most notable signature initiatives is Complete Communities, a project created to improve and revitalize underserved neighborhoods in the Houston area. And the common theme that I've taken from Mayor Turner's initiatives and projects and just his overall impact is his commitment to tackling issues head on and also ensuring equitable outcomes. As a young policy professional, my hope is to embody the ideas of a servant leader and to someone who can not only take on those hard challenges, but keep people at the center of that. And we feel here at the LBJ School that Mayor Sylvester Turner not only embodies these ideals, but continues to strive to create those outcomes and serve his people, just like our late Barbara Jordan. So if you all would join me in welcoming our distinguished lecturer, Mayor Sylvester Turner.
Look, let me start off, Brown. Thank you so very, very much for a very gracious introduction, and let me say hello to Mom and your sister from the Houston area. So thank you, Dr. Norm, and it's just a pleasure being here this afternoon to the Dean, Dean DeStazo, and to the Associate Dean, Joseph. And especially to all of the student leaders and representatives that I've had the pleasure of meeting with already this morning. It certainly has been enlightening. And let me thank you for honoring the legacy of Barbara Jordan and keeping keeping her memory alive. Really appreciate it. So give it up to all the students here at LBJ. And look, you honor me by asking me to come and be here this afternoon. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you for that. There are several of my friends who are here this morning, and I appreciate them being here this morning. And then I served in the legislature for a number of years, and my office coordinator, Pam, is here. So I really feel honored. She's still serving in the legislature with the dean of the Texas House of State Representative Sophronia Thompson. So I'm just honored to be with you. Look, I'm delighted to be with everyone today for the LBJ School of Public Affairs Barbara Jordan National Forum. And I want to thank you for extending me the invitation. Barbara Jordan was someone who I grew up admiring, looking up to, certainly have benefited myself from her leadership. She grew up and was born and reared on the northeast side in Fifth Ward. We referred to it as the Nickel. And I grew up on the northwest side, and we refer to it as the Fofo. Who said the Fofo? All right. Well, when you say the Fofo, you got me. And for those who are not familiar with the Fofo, it was the Studewood bus. I mean, the bus that came through from downtown that went through the community. I rode that bus for many, many years. And quite frankly, I grew up in a family similar, where we didn't have transportation. Dad died early. Mom was a maid at the Rice Hotel downtown, rearing 9 kids. So she was the CEO of the Turner household, my mom. And so I got back and forth from Acres Home to University of Houston on the Fofo. So that's how I made it through. But Barbara Jordan comes out of the Fifth Ward, a graduate of Phyllis Wheatley, went to church in that area, then to Texas Southern, and then just continued to strive and make history. She went on to serve in the Texas Senate. In fact, was the first African American to serve in the Texas Senate post-Reconstruction. Made her mark there. And then from the Texas Senate, she became the first African American woman from a southern state to be elected to the United States House of Representatives. And I would tell you from the very beginning, she wasn't there long. We talked about it earlier. She was only there for 6 years. But she made her mark in a very short period of time. As I said to the student leaders when I met, there are some people in life who are sprinters. They come out the gate very quick, they run their race very fast, and they are impactful in their race. And then there are some people who are long distance runners. They come out the gate, but they have to run 1 lap, and then they have to run a 2nd lap, and they have to run a 3rd or a 4th. Barbara Jordan, in many ways, was a sprinter. What she did in a short period of time, we are still talking about it to this very day. There are other people, and I put myself in this category. I'm a long distance runner. I ran for mayor not once, not twice, but 3 times. And so I'm a long distance runner. But regardless of where you are chosen, find your purpose and live out your purpose. And if you do that, then everything else will follow. She loved Houston, and Houston revered her lifelong commitment to integrity and fighting for social justice. I'm proud to say that last year, the City of Houston's Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs announced a civic art commission for the Houston Public Library, African American Library at the Gregory School, celebrating Congresswoman Jordan's life. We selected artists who will finish their work this year, and I invite you all to come see it when it opens. Barbara Jordan is such a legend, and the artwork created by these artists will bring forward the impact she had in defending the United States Constitution and representing the people in the 18th Congressional District. Jordan was a pioneer, a woman of many firsts, and seeing her image and her writings would keep her memory alive for generations to come. She has been gone for almost 3 decades, 26 years to be exact. But her legacy remains a beacon that guides many leaders today, including myself, in how to advocate on behalf of the people we represent. In fact, I would say that her presence is just as powerful today while our country continues to confront the consequences related to the January 6th insurrection at the nation's capital. Can you imagine what Barbara Jordan, Congresswoman Jordan, would think as the House Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol moves forward despite attempts to undermine and erase from history one of the darkest days of our democracy? Can you imagine what she would say if she was sitting in the halls of Congress, a day that insurrectionists attempted to stop Congress' constitutional mandate to validate the presidential election and prevent a smooth transition of power? I was in college. I was a college sophomore in 1974 when Jordan gave the eloquent opening statement before the Judiciary Committee's impeachment hearing for Richard Nixon. Her words ignited a spark across the entire country as she spoke as a strong defender of the United States Constitution. She said, "My faith in the Constitution is whole. It is complete. It is total. And I am not going to sit here and be an idle spectator to the diminution, the subversion, the destruction of the Constitution." In 1976, while I was a student in law school, she became the first African-American woman to deliver a keynote address at the Democratic National Convention. I have been in public service long enough to know the difference between a keynote speech that history remembers and a keynote speech the speakers wish history would forget. As she said in 1976, "A nation is formed by the willingness of each of us to share in the responsibility for upholding the common good. A government is invigorated when each of us is willing to participate in shaping the future of our great nation." Then in 1992, I was serving in the Texas House of Representatives when she gave her final speech before a national political audience, when she was invited for the second time to the Democratic Convention to be their keynote speaker. And this time, she talked about a change from what to what. It doesn't mean a whole lot just to make a change. The change is what you are changing from and what you're going to. And while in her remarks during the Watergate hearing that got a lot of attention, Jordan must also be remembered for co-sponsoring bills to help seniors, children, and the homeless. She once said, and something that I've always remembered, she said, "What the people want is very, very simple. They want an America as good as its promise." As we assemble today, many would agree that America yet has not lived fully up to its promise. Our country is more divided, polarized, and the economic disparities, the disparities in education, in housing, and healthcare are very evident. But yet, though she is not here, we are here. And our purpose, in part, in all of us, individually and collectively, is to make America as good as its promise. Even in the city of Houston, the life expectancy can vary by more than 24 years between neighboring zip codes. Close to the Nickel, 5th Ward, where she grew up, in that zip code, people, even in the city of Houston, their life expectancy is 24 years less than the neighboring zip codes. For those persons, they are still looking for America to be as good as its promise. And when you're living in a city where you have the largest and the best medical center in the world, and yet the life expectancy for some people in certain zip codes is 24 years less, we still have a lot of work to do. When Barbara Jordan spoke in 1976, she talked about the common good. Each one of us must share in the responsibility for upholding the common good. And the question is, why? Why was that so important to her? I believe because each of us is a member of this national community that she spoke about with a national purpose, striving for a common destiny, which I believe is seeking a more perfect union. That should challenge all of us to act and advocate for causes and purposes that benefit more than ourselves. And sometimes, in fact, many times, we are called upon to sacrifice our individual interests for the greater good, the common good. And we don't have to go further than the Pledge of Allegiance itself. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States, and I underscore united, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, which means not divided, with liberty and justice for all, for everyone. That's the perfect union. That is the total sum of all of its parts. Houston is the most diverse city in the country, but diversity doesn't mean very much if you are separate, segregated, and apart. The question is, can we be diverse and inclusive at the same time? And Associate Dean Joseph, that's why it's important to talk about diversity and inclusion and equity. Because if we are not inclusive, being diverse is simply a descriptive term. But being inclusive means we have been intentional. It's just like my daddy said when I grew up, and we come out of a large family, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with a table that could only hold 5 at a time. And my daddy would say to all of us, I want everybody in the house at dinner time. And only 5 could sit at the table at a time. So he would say, 5 of you can come in and eat. The rest of you will wait. And there was no rushing. There was no fighting. There was no bickering. Because after a certain point in time, my dad would walk into the kitchen and he would tap us on our shoulder. And he would say, you 5 have been at the table long enough. It's now time for the rest of the family to come to the table and eat. Because we all recognize that we will all have an opportunity to be at the table, there was no confusion. But anytime people believe they will be at the table and are entitled to remain at the table forever in a very diverse society, that does not work. Everybody deserves a seat at the table. So when we think about the theme for today's Barbara Jordan National Forum, the common good, we must remember her words and let them inspire us. We must refuse to remain silent on issues like social justice and economic equity, voting rights, climate change, and the movement to ban books and limit critical thought in our school. As contentious as they may be, when people remain silent, then we do a disservice to that common good. Martin Niemöller, a prominent Lutheran pastor in Germany, said something that I believe holds true today. He said, first they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists. I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. Our silence, the silence of people in this country, will work against the common good and everything that Barbara Jordan stood up. There comes a time when the good folk must stand up for that common good. Otherwise, we do a disservice to all of us. To build a national community, we must forge ahead with the understanding that we are as strong as our weakest link. And to build a national community, we must strengthen and lift those who are most vulnerable, like our children. When I was in the legislature, there were thousands of children who were not enrolled for the Children Health Insurance Program. In fact, they restructured the program. And instead of parents being able to sign up their kids on an annual basis, they changed it so you had to sign up every 6 months, because they knew that that would prevent many parents from having their children enrolled. And so a few of us decided to change that system. 3 Democrats, 2 Republicans got together, became the authors of this bill, House Bill 109. Many people told us it would not pass. We forged this compromise that will add more than 130,000 kids to the Children Health Insurance Program. And we made a pact amongst ourselves, these 5 authors. We said when the bill came to the floor, that even if amendments came from the left that I agreed with, that I would fight them off to keep the bill in a winnable condition, so to speak. And if amendments came from the right, my Republican author said they would fight them off, even though they were amendments that they pretty much agreed to. For 5 hours, we stood on the floor of the Texas House fighting off these bills. And I would say to my Democratic friends, I like what you're offering, but if I accept it, it works against getting this bill through. So we cannot sacrifice the good, seeking the perfect, and end up with nothing. For 5 hours, that was the message, that we cannot sacrifice the good, seeking the perfect, and end up with nothing. In the end, that bill passed by a large margin, and way more than 130,000 kids had access to insurance that they didn't have before. Why was that important? Important to me because sometimes we got to reflect on our own personal stories. I grew up not with any private health insurance. I grew up on the public health system. I had to catch that fofo with my mom, 2 buses to Ben Taub Hospital, getting there early in the morning and staying there all day long. And I said to myself, as a high school student growing up, it's hell to be poor. And so we have to bear in mind that what we do will impact the lives of not just a few, but impact the lives of so many. In 1999, still in the legislature, we created the System Benefit Fund in the wake of the deregulation of the Texas energy market. It provided a safety net to help low-income families and seniors pay their utility bills. We could not move forward at the mercy of the market if we did not protect those who could not protect themselves against rising prices during peak demand. It was fighting for the common good. As mayor, we are focused on building Brianna complete communities. 10 communities in our signature neighborhoods, revitalizing programs with a focus on quality neighborhood schools, affordable housing, quality parks and green space, business and job opportunities, educating and eradicating food deserts and energy poverty. Why? Because when I became mayor, I said I didn't want to be the mayor of 2 cities in one, cities of haves and have-nots. And so we wanted to invest in a real way in communities that had been disinvested for decades within our city. We fought for quality neighborhood schools because I remember when I grew up, they closed my neighborhood school because, they didn't think it was the best. And instead of investing in that neighborhood school, they closed it and bused me 18 miles one way, 36 miles a day. We have to fight for the common good. Through our climate action plan and resilience now plan, the city is better prepared today to deal with the shocks and stresses that come with the storm so we can move forward. Because there are some people who are living on the margins, like in the neighborhood that Barbara Jordan grew up in, that every time a storm comes, is trauma, need, and recovery. It's a constant state because climate change is real. And there are policymakers and legislators who put their heads in the sand. But Mother Nature is reminding us that if we don't do things differently, the storms will come with greater frequency, greater intensity, costing more. And people on the margins will constantly be in a state of trauma, need, and recovery. We have to act for the greater good. And then in Houston, we're taking a major initiative to address those who are homeless on our streets, because we recognize it's one thing to fill a pothole on the street. It's another thing to fill the pothole in human people's lives. And we have to fill that pothole in their lives. That's addressing the common good. And so we're living at a pivotal time. Right now, voting rights are under attack. In Harris County and other counties, the ability to vote by mail is threatened because an alarmingly high number of vote by mail applications and ballots have been rejected during this year's primary election due to the new rules created by Texas Senate Bill 1. I do not categorize that bill as representing common good, because let me tell you, gerrymandering comes in many forms, not just in gerrymandering geographical districts, but gerrymandering the electoral process. And we have to speak up and our voices have to be heard. And so we join with the Harris County judge to send a letter to the U.S. Attorney General Garland Merrick to ask the Department of Justice to use every legal option available to ensure that each eligible voter has their vote counted, irrespective of who they are voting for. We can talk about infrastructure, homelessness, public safety, and the economy, but the fundamental right to vote is at the heart of all of those issues, and it is in the common good. And it's in the common good that we must be active in this fight. Lastly, why is that so important? Barbara Jordan, inciting President Lincoln in that 1976 speech said, "As I would not be a slave, I would not be a master. And whatever differs from this, to the extent of the difference, is no democracy." Matthew 6:24 teaches us that for the common good, we must seek what is best for everyone, beginning with the least, the last, the lost, the most vulnerable, and the most forgotten. Like Barbara Jordan, each one of us must have the courage and the fortitude to use our voice, our education, our access, our station in life as a voice to do different. This is the essence of public service and helping others. And she would say, equality for all, privileges for none. But I believe Dr. King, Martin Luther King, said it poignantly. In the speech that he gave before he was assassinated, the mountaintop speech, he said this: "Let us develop a kind of dangerous unselfishness." which means you have to look beyond yourself and look at what impacts others. He went on to say, the question is not if I stop to help the sanitation workers, what will happen to my job? Not if I stop to help the sanitation workers, what will happen to all of the hours that I usually spend in my office every day and every week as a pastor? The question is not if I stop to help this man in need, what will happen to me? The question is, he says, if I do not stop to help the sanitation workers, what will happen to them? So today, let us rise up with a greater readiness. Let us stand with a greater determination. And let us move on in these powerful days, these days of challenge, to make America what it ought to be. We have an opportunity to make America a better nation. And what I will say to you, it starts with us each doing our part individually. One person can make a difference. And you need not be old to be wise. You can be young and impactful. One person, no matter how young, can make a difference. But you have to decide it's worth the price. One person can literally change the trajectory of this world. And that's why for Barbara Jordan, she talked about one person being willing to stand up and make an ultimate difference. And I'll close with this on a personal story because I know it's true. It was that maid who never learned how to drive, who never graduated from high school, who reared 9 kids, who signed my loan papers to go to law school, who never took a flight except one time to see her son graduate. And now one of those 9 kids is now the mayor of the 4th largest city in the United States of America. One person can make a difference. And so I leave you with just one question. What's your purpose? And are you prepared to be the next Barbara Jordan? Just put your own name behind it, and we'll see what happens as we watch you down the road. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much for that inspiring address. We can just give Mayor Turner another round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We collected a couple of questions, and so I'm just gonna start with the first one. So, as the mayor of the most diverse city in the nation, how do you build belonging through your position as mayor in Houston, Texas?
And I think it goes back to the comments that I made earlier that you can be diverse, but at the same time, you can be separate, segregated, and apart. The question is, do people believe that is there a seat at the table for them? And you have to be very intentional about being inclusive. To give you some examples, for example, the first woman to be the director of my public works department, one of the largest in the country, 4,000 plus employees. In 183 years, I appointed a woman. The first person, for example, now to head Metro Transit, I just appointed someone of an Asian, okay? With respect to people from the LGBT community, they are a part of my team, executive team. They are there. My chief of staff, for example, is an African-American female, the first that's ever taken place. So it is, when it comes to business opportunities from the city, I think in terms of the business opportunities, we have been fairly historic in diversifying even the money from the city of Houston. So these are things where you have to be inclusive, where people recognize that they are represented at the table, that they are included in our policies, and that their voice is being heard and that they are being seen. If you do all of those things, then I think not only will your city be diverse, but your city will prosper and do very, very well.
In leading the mayor's initiative on climate resilience, what do you see as the biggest challenges and opportunities ahead of Houston and Texas over the next decade?
We still have to convince people that climate change is real. I mean, just bear in mind, let me just stay with the state of Texas, okay? We had a similar winter storm in 2011. Between 2011 and 2021, our policymakers, whether at the Public Utility Commission at ERCOT, they never talked about climate change. And if you don't talk about it, you can't act on it. And so in terms of weatherizing the system, in that 10-year period, they never did. Well, Mother Nature came back in 2021 in February, and it reminded us, you didn't do anything, and now it's costing you billions of dollars, and several hundred people lost their lives. That is unacceptable. So the storms are coming with greater intensity. In the last 6 years since I have been mayor, we have faced 7 federally declared disasters. 7, okay? And that's a huge cost in terms of people and resources. Lastly, you can't have climate change, mitigation change, without resilience. And you can't have resilience and climate change without equity. Okay? Equity has to be at the table. Climate change is not just an academic conversation. Okay? It affects people in real time. And at the intersection of climate change are your healthcare disparities, your housing disparities, your economic disparities. Everything is exacerbated by climate change. So there has to be really a paradigm shift. And we have to recognize that we can do things differently. That's why in February of 2020, we put forth our Resilient Houston Plan. On Earth Day of that very same year, we put forth our Climate Action Plan based on 4 major pillars. Energy transition. Houston is the energy capital of the world. We want to lead in energy transition. Electrifying our transportation fleet. By 2030, we want half of that, public and private, to be electrified. And we're moving forward. In fact, on the agenda tomorrow, we're purchasing a number of electric vehicles. So we're moving in that direction. The third is building optimization, conservation, and efficiency. And the fourth is material management. So when you do all of that, you're moving forward. And then the goal is within this decade for the city of Houston to plant 4.6 million trees. In the city of Houston. And we're doing a lot of heat mapping because you need to determine where things are occurring, and that will determine where you plant the trees and the sort of pavement that you put down. So you got to look at the data, you got to use the technology. If you do all of those things, I think we can make significant progress. The good news is that we have an administration on the national level that is a partner with cities. That's the good news. Now we just have to work on between the national and the local. We got to work on in between. Did I say that diplomatically? All right, good.
Actually gets into my next question. I think I love the story that you shared about bipartisanship in your time at the state capitol. And also, I know earlier we were able to talk about your initiatives as the mayor of the state of Houston. I think one of the things that we're quite aware of being at a public policy school is that polarization is pervasive in politics and in public affairs today. From your perspective, how do we overcome this polarization to build diverse connections and policy solutions, just as Barbara Jordan did?
Well, a house divided against itself will not stand. I don't care who you are. If the country is divided, then you hurt yourselves from within. I'm not so much concerned about Russia and China and all of these other entities, okay? It concerns me if the House in the United States, if we are divided. And if we are divided, then we are not at our best. And quite frankly, even someone on the opposite end cannot prevail if there is division. It will work against us all, okay? And I don't have any problems with being liberal, being conservative. I have a problem with being radical and extremist. And where I see right now is that when you start talking about critical race theory, and when you start talking about voter restriction and intimidation bills, we have a problem. okay? And it's going to take people being willing to stand up and make a difference. Let me tell you, when I was in the legislature, I would have some Republicans come to me sometime, and they would say, Mayor, no, not Mayor, I wasn't Mayor then. Let me back up a little bit. Yeah, they would say, Rep, I agree with you. I just couldn't do it. And I said, why you couldn't do it? I said, I couldn't do it. Politically, that would be tough. And I said to them, it's not going to get easier. When you think it's going to get easier, it's not. There comes a time when you have to stand up and be bold in your convictions and your principles. And if you're not willing to stand up, then you may as well join the other side. What we need now, I believe, in this country, we need people of goodwill. And I believe there are more people of goodwill. But people have to stand up. Silence will give consent. Okay? Silence gives consent. I believe there are more good people than those who want to operate on the extremes. But if you don't stand up and speak, then you may as well put yourself with where those extremes are. I cited what I did about not being a socialist, not being a trade unionist, not being a Jew for particular reasons. If, for example, on voter restriction bills, if people say, well, it's not affecting me, I can vote, so I'm not the one that they're trying to intimidate, so no problem on my end. It doesn't stop with one group. People can say, well, I'm not a member of the LGBTQ community, so it doesn't affect me. Well, not today. Because let me tell you, evil has no boundaries. There are no boundaries with evil. People that are mean-spirited, they just don't stop with one. But the more they can get away with, they become emboldened and they keep moving forward. When Putin invaded Ukraine 8 or 9 years ago, that didn't satisfy him. You know what it said to him? I did it once, I can do it again. Because the world has stood by and tacitly given me approval. Well, the same things applies right here in this country. If we allow people to take on one particular group, I'm not Hispanic, so let me deal with them. I'm not an immigrant, let me deal with them. I'm not a Muslim, let me deal with them. I'm not a Jew, let me deal with them. I'm not a member of the LGBT community, let me deal with them. I'm not a woman, let me deal with them. Eventually, they will come for you. They will come for you. It's just a matter of time, okay? Because those are people, as Barbara Jordan would say, who are advancing their particular special interests. And special interests and common good are antithetical of one another. They cannot coexist in the same space. One must give to the other, okay? So I think we have to be very careful with the polarization in our country, or it will work against us all. And that's why it's so important for good people to stand up. And that's why I cite what we did in the legislature with House Bill 109. Because there were Republicans and Democrats, authors standing together, fighting off those who were trying to amend with the simple statement, we cannot sacrifice what is good, seeking the perfect from your point of view, and then end up with nothing. Because when you end up with nothing, everybody loses. And I think we need to love our country so well, so much, that we have to look past our individual desires and ask, what is in the best interest of this country? And the question as mayor of the city of Houston that I must always ask and answer, what's in the best interest of the city? Everything else is a subset thereof. Okay. Oh, and it's in a Longhorn bag.
We had a different bag. We thought this bag was better. So as a token of your visit to the LBJ School, we would love to present you this beautiful burnt orange.
Yeah.
I know it hurts. I know it hurts.
It's just absolutely gorgeous.
We tried to get a hook 'em earlier, not so much.
Is that right?
Okay.
That's okay. You know.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you all for
We wanted to
having
give you
me.
This token of our appreciation.
Thank you so very, very much. Appreciate it. Thanks, Chris. Much. You need this?
Perfect. I probably do.
Let me push this up.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you all for being here today. I first want to thank Mayor Turner again for graciously giving his time to come speak to us at the LBJ School. Us student co-chairs for the planning of this Barbara Jordan National Forum really wanted to focus on community, and bringing a public servant who has been so distinguished and so committed to Houston really means a lot to us to have him here. I also want to thank the audience, all of y'all, for showing up. I know it's a Tuesday and y'all are all really busy, but we do appreciate you being here for Mayor Turner and for the Barbara Jordan National Forum. And lastly, I do want to remind y'all that the forum is not over. Mayor Turner has brought a really special piece to today, and we look forward to continuing the conversation on public service tomorrow at our lecture with Dr. Colette Pierce-Burnett. So please go online to our website and RSVP to that as well. But thank you again, Mayor Turner, for being here, and thank you everyone for coming.